We are April and Scott, creators of naughtygym.com, and this is The Naughty Gym Show.
For years, we've been fitness and nutrition coaches to thousands of people through our commercial gyms and online platform. We've also spent nearly a decade in an ever-evolving open relationship.
This show brings together two of our biggest passions, fitness and sex positivity. Our mission is to maximize the physical and mental health of anyone brave enough to explore relationship structures that run counter to societal norms.
We have demolished our old ways of thinking about relationships, and from that rubble, built a life full of happiness, adventure, and vitality. And now we want to help you do the same.
So hop on the treadmill, start the show, and let us teach you how to never stop playing. Welcome back to the Naughty Gym Show. I am your host, April, and this is my co-host, the most brilliant man I have ever met in my entire life, Scott.
She's probably met 4 people. Maybe 5.
That's something that I've told you since I've met you, though. Your mind is, you have a brilliant, beautiful mind. So anyways, today we are going to be talking about wild love theory again, because we have heard so much feedback, but also we kind of wanted to unpack how we have been processing wild love theory behind the scenes, and go into some of the conversations that we've had, how we have arrived to this place, how I kind of pushed back at first, and why, the reason for that pushback, and how I'm still processing through that.
And probably some of the best conversations we've ever had in the 10 years of our relationship. And we've had a lot of great conversations, and it's just been very unexpected.
But a beautiful kind of chapter is opening up.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, wild love theory, we may summarize it briefly, but there's a whole episode, maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, and you may want to go back and listen to it, because it may become a really big part of how we operate a lot of things going forward. Yeah,
so it was his keynote address. It's a theory that Scott came up with. And so you can go back and listen to that episode, but we will kind of summarize what it is. But first, we want to talk about a couple things that we have coming up for Naughty Gym. So we're here at Hedonism Resort right now. We'll be here until April 6th, doing some classes in the gym Monday through Friday, and just helping out host some events for them. But right now we have 2 retreats that we want to talk about. So I, along with Catherine from Expansive Connection Coaching, are hosting a women's, sorry, I had on airplane mode. So I, along with Catherine from Expansive Connection, are hosting a women's retreat called Wild and Wise. It's a retreat for women that are perimenopausal or menopausal, or really anybody that has a uterus and ovaries, or has had them removed and is experiencing, or may someday experience menopause. That is every woman. And so what the goal of this is November 13th through the 16th of 2025 in the Smoky Mountains. And we're going to bring in a hormone specialist to speak with us about the different changes, the different options that we have, because every woman experiences menopause in a different way, different symptoms, different everything. We're going to bring in Tristan Toromino, who is going to talk about our journey sexually as we move through that stage of life. Catherine's going to do some group coaching sessions and some yoga sessions. I'm going to talk about how your nutrition can change, how your fitness can change. And you're going to be able to connect with other women, not necessarily in the lifestyle, but sex positive. So this is not only for lifestyle women, but there will be lifestyle women there, to bond and connect and forge a sisterhood. Sometimes it can feel like you're an island and you're experiencing these things on your own. And for me, I have days where I'm like, I feel crazy because I have the brain fog and it affects your cognitive function. And we just want to bring women together in a safe space where we can talk openly about this. And we want every woman to be able to leave with kind of a plan in place. Like, what can I do? We're going to troubleshoot. So The links are live on our website, naughtygym.com. Go to the events page and you can book your rooms. If you want to Zoom with me so I can answer some questions, you're welcome to schedule that as well. And then the same time, November 13th through the 16th, the men are having a retreat.
Yeah, ours is called Mancation Mountain, and it's just going to be a great time to get some bro time, connection time with other guys. And I've said this in other things before, but I lost a lot of friends when we got outed in my hometown. People that I was really close to who just sort of turned their back on us because of our lifestyle choices. And we've made incredible friends around the world, fortunately, because of what we get to do in Naughty Gym. But it's always at events, it's always at parties, and I think this would be a great opportunity for us guys who all share a similar outlook on our lifestyle choices and our sexuality to get together, bond, have some fun, have some great talks. But this whole week, or this whole weekend, is going to be an incredible, super fun and challenging few days. You should go and look at the itinerary. It's just going to be so much fun. The cabin is unreal, and we're gonna get to play and work and leave there with some tools that are going to make us better people going forward.
Yeah. And you only have 2 king suites left, but you have the bunk room. So the men's retreat's a little bit smaller than the women's. So, and yours has been booking up faster. The men's retreat is also open to anyone who's sex positive. So if you're gay, if you're bisexual, if you identify as a man, any man is welcome at your retreat. And I think that's such a beautiful thing that you're creating this safe space for men that can just be open. And, so it can be so difficult to meet friends as an adult, but to be able to bond the way that you've bonded with some of the men friends in your life has been a beautiful thing for me to see.
Yeah.
So go to our website. That's called Mancation Mountain, November 13th through the 16th, 2025 for both of these retreats. All of the details are online. And if you want to schedule a Zoom with either one of us, the option is there as well. So, all right, let's get right into the meat and potatoes of it. So if you would take, I don't know if you can, 3 to 4 minutes, maybe just kind of summarizing what wild love theory is for those that maybe haven't listened to that podcast and they can go back and kind of get the full scope of it.
Well, I'm going to do it much faster than that because you can go back and listen to the full explanation from my keynote from a couple episodes ago. But wild love theory is a 7-word theory. It's imposed relational limits prevent maximal relational happiness. And essentially what that means is, while we all have done it, every limit that you put on your partner, every boundary that you put on them, and people describe the word boundary a little bit differently, but I use the word limit because it means something I'm telling her I'm not comfortable with her doing, that she might otherwise would choose to do if it weren't for me saying that. And so all of those things like, hey, no separate dating or no kissing or we don't full swap or those types of things are me limiting her autonomy and her authenticity as a person. They may be necessary for a while, but my theory is that if you will work on yourself, you can eventually get to the point where you don't need those limits on your partner in order to feel safe and secure.
But it's not just working on yourself. It's also building a trust with your partner to know that they have your best intention at heart, and that nothing they do is malicious or intended to hurt you.
Yeah, and again, we don't want to rehash that whole episode. And some of this may seem even more challenging than it should if you haven't listened to that episode, but it really is about, this theory gives you a reason and potential ethical motivation to really work on yourself. And it would also give your partner, if they embrace this concept, motivation to work on themselves and a framework from which to view it all. Right. And what has been unexpected, I think, for us, because it's happened to us and it's happened to quite a few other people who have been messaging us, is that it's given them that framework through which to view these conversations has resulted in some incredible
conversations
and opening up to your
Yeah.
partner and stuff. And
But here's the thing. So, and here's kind of what I wanted to talk about. So, go listen to those. Start with April Gets Her Stocking Stuffed, because that is the first time Scott, on the podcast, told me about wild love theory and offered and told me he was removing all boundaries from me.
Oh, and before you finish, I do think it's important to say this can be as extreme as you might be thinking it sounds. In other words, she is now, from my perspective, free to do whatever she wants, whenever she wants, with whoever she wants, in whatever manner she chooses. And that doesn't just mean sexually. That means, and it's mostly because of the way she has treated me and treated our relationship over the last 10 years. I just truly believe that even if I'm uncomfortable with something she chooses to do, it wasn't done trying to hurt me. Right. It was her effort in being completely authentic and true to herself. And then that gives me something to work on if it does bring up some of those emotional reactions.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to that first podcast, April Gets Her Stocking Stuff, when he presented this theory to me and said he was going to remove all boundaries from me, my first reaction was pushback. And I was like, well, really, and I told him afterwards, things that you didn't hear on the podcast was, I don't want this. This is not a gift to me. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt almost like abandonment. And I've talked before how I live my life by this set of boundaries and control, and that in my brain helps me create balance. And I know where the line is, and if I cross that line, what will happen? Will it cause hurt or pain? And so I had to really sit with it and think about what I know to be true about our relationship. What I know to be true is that I trust Scott. What I know to be true is that he has my best intention at heart. What I know to be true is he isn't going to intentionally do anything to hurt me because he loves me, and I trust in that.
And this isn't something, the full expression of this idea is no limits on your partner. But I don't know how many people will ever be able to get there. I'm not even sure if she starts really leaning into it, how well I'm going to handle it. But it's certainly not something that if your relationship is on shaky grounds or you're fighting a lot,
it's not the time.
You can start the process of working on those things. We all should be in the middle of that process anyway, but it's not something you should just say, okay, I know we're struggling right now, but no more rules.
Well, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. So, when he presented this to me and said he was taking off all boundaries, he also said, I do not expect reciprocity. I do not expect you to take all boundaries off of me, because he knew that I was in a much different place than he is. I am in the middle of unpacking a lot of trauma from my childhood. I have abandonment issues. I have trust issues. I have jealousy that comes up, and we don't talk about that a lot because it doesn't manifest a lot, because I'm so slow. I'm very cautious and intentional with each movement. Each move that we've done in the lifestyle has, for me, been a lot of work that I've done. And so I have a therapist I actually, because of wild love theory, I found a new therapist, because the therapist that I was working with, I started working with after my parents passed to work through grief and some of my childhood trauma, but not specifically that. And so because of wild love theory, I found a new therapist that can help me work on specific trauma points in my past that will hopefully help me expand and open up. So what wild love theory did for me specifically was it really shone a light on the parts of me that I'm clinging onto, the trauma that maybe I thought I had been working on, but maybe hadn't unearthed all the way. And I always say, I don't own you. I don't own Scott. He is a grown man. He should,
Maybe.
he could still, and if he wanted to leave me, he could leave me. If he wanted to cheat, he could cheat. If, a woman came by and just like, swept him off his feet, he could leave. He could do that whether I hold on tightly or whether I remove boundaries. Because
and the
that's just.
And we're not saying boundaries are bad, limits are bad, boundaries
Right.
are bad. They feel like a safety net. They feel like, hey, we've got this perfect little wonderful relationship. Let's build a small cage around it so we can protect it.
Right.
But really what that tends to do that'll work for a while, but it can potentially start to breed discontent or that feeling of like, well, yeah, we've got a good relationship. It's a great relationship, but I'd like more, but I can't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess because I've never been one to feel like you've always been so easy with me as far as like you want me to explore and you want that it's always been kind of me holding back and holding in out of fear of, what could happen and stuff like that. And so I do on this podcast, I guess, trigger warning in case people have experienced sexual trauma, but I feel like it's time for me to kind of open up about some of my sexual trauma, some of my childhood trauma, and some of the ways that even though we've not shared openly with a lot of people and some of our close friends we have, but I think it's important because I think sometimes it can look easy the way we navigate the lifestyle, but it's not always easy. We have really tough conversations. And since Wild Love Theory, I've opened up even more to you about some of my childhood trauma. And so I had childhood sexual trauma. I was molested by a family member and then by some people that were not family members at a young age. My mother knew about it, but my mother had her own trauma that she was dealing with. And so it was just kind of never spoken about again. And, I've told you this, I can remember at a very early age, I want to say I was probably 4 or 5 years old, feeling loneliness in like such an acute way that looking back now, I'm like, how did I process that like at that young of an age? But it allowed me to disassociate. I was able to really compartmentalize my emotions and my feelings, but I also was very aware of, I was able to hone in on my intuition and read people. And so I honed those skills at a very young age. Like I can read people and pick up on energy and
red flags.
Yeah, I can see all that kind of
that
stuff.
I don't see usually.
Right. But, and I told you this last weekend, Scott and I had a really good talk about Wild Love Theory. And I was talking about like switching therapists, and I was listening to a podcast and I can't remember the girl's name, but she said something, and this was about a year or two ago. I was listening to it and she said, I feel like I have carried with me a chronic sadness. And she said it was almost like a grieving. And that resonated so much with me because I feel like my entire life, I haven't suffered with depression. I wouldn't call it there was a period in my life in my last marriage that I was on antidepressants for a little bit, and I am an advocate. If people need antidepressants, use them, but I didn't feel like they were what I needed. But and still sometimes it's a chronic sadness, almost a grieving of that childhood that I could have had, the grief of the relationship with my family and my mother that I really wanted. And I felt alone for most of my life. Like I had to be independent because you couldn't really depend on anybody. I had to present as fiercely independent and capable and not vulnerable and be tough. And so when I met you and, really got into therapy, is when I realized it was okay to be vulnerable and it's okay to depend on people. And so,
Well, and I think it's important for you to talk this stuff out publicly because, one, you alluded to this a minute ago. A lot of times people think that maybe because we're lifestyle professionals or something,
yeah,
that it's because it's easy for us. That's why we do some of this. It's never been it, it's easy in some sense because
right.
we have an easy relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not been without its struggles. I mean, we've had long conversations into the night.
Yeah,
Some of those are not comfortable.
yeah,
Many of them aren't comfortable, but they're all productive because we love and trust each other. And we, even though the conversations can be sometimes heated or sometimes tear jerking, we know that we're going to be on the other side of that disagreement or discussion. We're going to be better for it.
yeah,
But what's always shocked, and you see this with a lot of, I think a lot of us podcasters present an image. We're not intentionally trying to act like we've got it all together, but it just kind of happens when you're talking about stuff. People just assume that it's, you're just breezing through this
right,
non-monogamy stuff.
right.
But it's also been incredibly impressive because you've not been comfortable being completely open about some of those things that's happened to you as a childhood. You've, in pieces, exposed that to me throughout our relationship, and
Right.
even last weekend, I think you kind of really just laid it all out there in a way that I hadn't heard. And
Right.
what I've been impressed with for the last 10 years is most of the time, I think, no, I shouldn't say that. I've just seen a lot of times where people, men and women, had sexual trauma in their past, especially molestation when you're young, and it can destroy your relationship with romance and sex, or at least hinder it, or even just relationships in general. And it's always been shocking to me to hear that you went through that experience because the person I see, the person that I'm partnered with,
Yeah.
is one of the strongest people I know and seems to have an incredibly healthy relationship, not just with me, but other people and with sex.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
it had to have taken a lot of emotional work that I don't even have any capability of understanding.
well, I think, and we talked this past weekend about this, there's two parts to that. The first part is I chose to be I never wanted to be a victim. I never wanted people to see me as a victim. And I think, just to be transparent, my mother had a lot of trauma, but my mother sat in that victimhood and she wouldn't get therapy and and she used those wounds as an excuse to be angry and bitter, and it festered and she was unhappy, and she used it as an excuse for her bad behavior. And seeing that, I knew I never wanted anybody to see me as a victim, which plays out in unhealthy ways because it became then hard for me to ask for help when I was sick, or like when you take care of me when I'm sick, that's difficult for me because I'm fighting, like I'm independent, like I'm not a victim, like that kind of mentality. So it kind of forced me over into the other ditch, like from one ditch to the other, where it became hard to ask for help.
Well, not only that, but often you have trouble admitting that you're upset or admitting that you're angry.
Yeah.
At least at first, when
Right.
something bubbles up, maybe I did something.
Yeah.
And maybe I, was too touchy-feely with a woman at an event or something. And,
Yeah.
and where normally you would have loved it, it'll bubble up. And
it would be hard for me to communicate that, yes, that did hurt me. Yes, I am angry about that, because I felt like I needed to control my emotions so much so that I didn't know what would happen. Like, will I spiral out? Will I handle it in an unhealthy way like my mother did? And so,
well, before you continue, I want to say, if you'll wait to the end of this podcast, we've been open for 10 years. We've been to don't know how many events now, and how many of these conversations we've had. Last night at Hito, with this beautiful, lovely couple we met and spent most of the day with. We experienced the single greatest expression of lovingly using your language to say what you want and don't want,
and express your emotions.
And you just need to wait to the end. I know that doesn't sound super intriguing, but I'm telling you, what we experienced last night was a great lesson for all of us.
Well, and for women in general who have trouble using their voice. But so to my point with wild love theory and bringing up my trauma, well, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit more. So when my parents passed, my mother and my stepfather passed in 2021 from COVID, to me, it was just like, there's never good timing, but I was like, this is the shittiest timing ever, because a year before that, I had started working with a therapist, and I was reading a book called The Emotionally Absent Mother, because my mother was completely emotionally absent in my life. And that book, I finished that book a month before my mom was hospitalized. But the point of reading that book and working through that was for me to be able to sit down with my mother and finally confront some of the things in a loving and healthy way that had happened in my childhood, and ask her questions like, how did she feel when this happened to me? And why, there was no like scooping me up and like hugging me and I'm sorry that happened. In fact, as an adult, there was not to my recollection, and now there could have been, and I blocked that out, but
even when you were like a real small child, you don't remember
my earliest
in your mom's lap?
No, I had one older brother who was my parental figure, and he was 10 years older. And we were all pretty much on our own. My mother was married 4 times. We have different, I have 5 brothers. We all have different dads, except for I have one brother. We share the same dad. But there was no steady parental figure until, really ever. My mother was just very emotionally absent. And so as an adult in my 30s, my mother brought up my sexual trauma in an argument. And until that point, I kind of thought that maybe I was making it up. Maybe it didn't happen.
She brought it. You and her were having an argument.
We were having an argument.
Something else.
And she said something to the effect of, are you acting like this because of what happened when you were a child? And I was like, goodness. Until that point, she had never brought it up. And so that was when I started, like, I'm going to fix this. I've got to fix this. I want a relationship with my mother.
Was she saying that in a mean way or
a
loving way?
No. She was not saying that in a loving way.
Oh, okay.
She was saying it to win an argument.
Oh, well, that's a great tool
to
bring up to your daughter.
So anyway, she passed away before I was able to have those conversations with her. But I was still able to work through that. We did some things, like I needed closure. We can talk on another episode about a DMT experience that I did, a guided trip that brought closure to her death for me and left me in a space that I felt more contentment and joy and overwhelming love than I've probably ever felt in my life. And so it's been a journey. I say all that to say all this. So wild love theory kind of shone a light on those places that I still need to work on. And it motivated me to actively work on those things again, because you are such a loving person. You are so expansive. And when I look at that, that's something that I desire for myself. I want to be expansive, and I don't want to feel those visceral reactions. And sometimes I don't know why I feel like I'll see you with another woman and you're just sitting next to her, and it could be nothing happened, but all of a sudden I feel that like heaviness in my chest, and I don't want to feel that. And so I want to work through that in every way possible, and by whatever means possible. And I don't know how long it will take. And I don't know if I will ever get to a place where I can say, Scott, I'm removing all boundaries, because I still have a desire to feel safe. And I still have times where I struggle with abandonment issues, and that manifests in an overly fiercely independent mask. And so I'm working on that.
Why do you think, though? Because I think most of us that go through this or begin this non-monogamous journey all would say some similar stuff, that we've got these issues, we want to work on them, we don't like feeling these negative emotions when we see our partner experiencing joy with somebody else.
Yeah.
And we have spent 9 years working through that process. But what about wild love theory? Because this has been unexpected for me. This was not really part of it. It just seems to have opened a window for some people to have conversations in a way that they apparently, us included, couldn't have before they started thinking through that idea.
It almost gives you, again, maybe not boundaries, but it gives you a structure. It gives you almost like an outline. Like, we always say that your lifestyle journey is not linear, right? And I believe that. But when you look at wild love theory, as I can love whoever I want in whatever capacity that I want. And we have people in our lives that we love so much.
But it's not always been comfortable saying that.
It's not been comfortable all the time, but I want more of that in my life. And when I think about my children, I have always wanted more people in their life, like as many people that can love them. I want to love them, whether that's my ex-in-laws or my ex-husband or his new wife or her family. Like, I feel no jealousy for that. Like, if they love my children, I want as many people in their lives that can love them as possible. And that's what I want for us too. I want as many people in your life that can love you in every capacity possible. And I want that for myself too. And so when I feel like jealousy for that, I'm like, well, why do I feel that for you, but I don't feel that for my grandbabies or my kids? Like, I want all of that for them. That's a me issue.
Yeah.
That's my fears and my insecurities and my traumas that I need to work on.
But when you say love, I don't think many people would disagree with the statement, I want a lot of people in my life that love me and that I love. But do you mean that a little bit differently now, at least potentially?
I mean, in love, I want to allow that. And I don't know if I'm there. Maybe I am getting closer to that in love. Because, I mean, how good does it feel to be in love? And not just that new relationship energy, but I want you to love hard and deeply and recklessly and to feel that. So,
yeah, I mean, like maybe the only thing for most of us that's stronger or impacts our life more than being literally in love with somebody is the fear of your partner being in love with somebody.
Right.
And when that balance starts to, like, it sort of starts out for all of us, I think, where that's huge. The fear of the idea that your partner could be in love with somebody else and is huge. The fear is way up here. The benefit seems minimal.
Right.
It's so scary.
Because I think for me, I catastrophize. So I'm like, well, if he falls in love with somebody, well, then what? Then he's going to leave me and he's going to. But if you open it up, then we have shared experiences that nobody else is ever going to experience. We've been through things together, you and I, that you will never be able to go through with somebody else. But you could share other experiences and other hardships and other celebrations and other, life points with someone else that I will never be able to experience with you. And that, I don't think, takes away from what we have.
But it's still terrifying.
It's still terrifying. And I'm still not, I'm saying all of that logically, that I know this, but still I get visceral reactions, and still emotionally, I am not equipped yet to take off all boundaries.
Yeah, right. Well, but I have seen, I don't know if you feel like you've had a big change, but there's been something I could see changing over the last couple months with you. Even that experience, and we can't talk about who they were because
Well, we just don't talk about who we.
But we didn't play.
Yeah.
But we had an incredible experience last night at Hito, not at a party, we were just sitting on a daybed talking.
Yeah.
But I could tell that you were in that experience in a different way than you've ever allowed yourself to be. We were all snuggled up and holding hands and stroking and touching, and it was not sexual at all. And it was just a beautiful thing to see four people feel completely free to express how they were feeling over somebody they met 48 hours ago or something. But there's been other examples of things like that where I've seen you lean in to try things that you would have pushed hard against and not been okay with before.
I think something that I have, to pat myself on the back, I have been good at is doing hard things. And if there's something new, I want to just do it. I don't want to take too much time thinking about it. I don't want to, because I can talk myself out of it. I just need to rip the Band-Aid off and go in and do it. And a lot of times it's a lot less scary for me to do it like that. And so my internal dialogue is going, we're going to have these conversations. You're going to walk in there and you're going to do it, and you're going to turn your brain off and you're just going to do it. And so I think there was some of that last night where I'm like, we're not playing with them. This is just conversation. We can pet, and that's okay. And it was a safe space, but they were also, I think I'm more woo-woo than I like to admit.
Woo-woo, what do you mean?
As far as energy, I feel energies. I do. I feel energy exchange. I can call it intuition, call it whatever you want to call it, but I can feel when I'm around people their authenticity. I can feel their kindness. I can feel their good energy, and sometimes that energy will pull you in, and it makes you feel held, and it makes you feel safe. And that's what I felt last night. And so it felt like a safe space to kind of open up in that realm.
Yeah, we wanted to interview them for the podcast.
Yeah,
they just weren't comfortable yet because they're not out and open, and they have jobs and all the same worries that we had too before we were outed.
So, but again, I want to bring it back to wild love theory, because we have had a lot of people reach out saying, we're going to start, we've had conversations about it. We're going to start trying to apply wild love theory to our relationship. And everybody that we've talked to has done it in a different way, which I think is beautiful because everybody is at a different place in their relationship. And one thing that I think that is important to note is if you are having struggles in your relationship, if you do not have a solid foundation in your relationship, if you have a lot of trust issues in your relationship, this is probably not the time to implement wild love theory. This is a time to do the therapy and do the work and build the trust. And we're at a place in 10 years in where you felt comfortable taking the guardrails, taking all boundaries off of me. And that was because I have been trustworthy.
Let me say
I am transparent.
Let me say this part here, because I worry that this sounds like a Scott thing, that I have done my own internal work and I'm so strong I don't even put any rules on my wife. It's not that. It is because I feel like I've experienced 10 years of the most incredibly trustworthy, loving woman, powerful woman that I could have imagined being in my life. And at some point, I just looked at the rules we still had in place, which weren't many anymore, and thought, the only reason I have these rules in place is because I still have, I'm going to say this in a bad way, I was just being an emotional pussy. Now, I don't mean that every emotional thing that we have means we're
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Well,
because I think you're one of the most emotionally healthy people that I've ever met.
Well, that's the point. I have a lot of weaknesses.
Well, we all do, yeah.
But one of them is my emotional strength. And at some point, as I was working through this process, which was, roughly a year of processing through this whole thing, I realized that the boundaries I still had on you, I had just sort of accepted as probably going to always be ongoing because they're natural. Of course, this is a boundary you should have. You shouldn't be in a committed relationship with somebody and tell them, hey, I don't care if you go fuck somebody on Friday night and don't even tell me.
Yeah.
Or don't ask my permission. That doesn't seem right at first. And then I thought, but why? Because we questioned so many other things. Monogamy, non-monogamy didn't seem right.
Right.
So I started questioning and realizing those are just in place to give me a feeling of safety that I no longer need, because I've had 10 years with a woman that's never once violated my trust, ever. And the wild love theory is basically my intellectual expression of what you've put into the world.
Yeah. Well, so when you told me that, my reaction was like, well, of course you can take the guardrails off. I've never done anything to violate your trust. And it was kind of like that fight, like flight or fight. In flight or fight, I have no flight. I have all fight. And then there's like fight or flight, freeze or fawn. I don't have freeze or fawn. It's all fight. And so that came up like, well, of course you could offer that to me. Like, I'm super cautious and I'm super slow and I'm not reckless. I don't act crazy or what, I do act wild. I do get unhinged sometimes. But that was my old kind of those thought patterns and stuff that I am working on undoing, because I'm like, you have made one misstep and I have completely forgiven you for that. I have no bad feelings about that. And had that same thing happen today, it would be a nothing.
Right. Oh yeah, I mean, there wasn't,
because that was something that I've already worked through. That was jealousy issues that I hadn't confronted yet at that time, and I mean that today it wouldn't have been an issue. And so I was still holding on to that, though. When you presented wild love theory, it's like, well, of course, like you've broken my trust. How do you expect me to remove like all boundaries from you? But that I've since been able to realize isn't a you issue. That's a me issue.
Well,
because I do believe, I go back to what I know to be true. I know you're trustworthy. I know you're kind. I know you are one of the most honest to a fault people that I know. Now, people who may be listening to this who are like, well, you had an affair 10 years ago. Okay.
Me and you. We didn't have an affair with each other. We've never cheated on each other.
But
we cheated.
We had an affair. That's how we got to.
Yeah,
right. So
I couldn't figure out how to say that.
But like, you are so honest, brutally honest. Sometimes where I'm like, you don't have to tell everything. Like, but so if you are in a relationship, hopefully wild love theory causes conversations. If you're not in a place where you feel like I can't remove these boundaries, like these make me feel safe, you need to feel safe then. Do what is going to make you feel safe as a person and as a couple. But what this isn't is something that should cause animosity or resentment. Somebody asked me, like, how do you deal with the fact that Scott has taken all boundaries off of you, but you still have boundaries on him? And I was like,
limits.
Limits are better, that make me feel safe.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad about that at all. Not at all. And I have never been an even Steven person. And even when my children were growing up, it was just like, you know, and maybe this sounds douchey, but life isn't fair. Everybody has different emotions and processes things differently. You cannot treat everyone the exact same way because everyone is different. And so he is able to take limits off of me. I'm not there yet. And as long as he knows that I am working constantly on myself, I am loving him, I am trying. My goal, I would love to take all the boundaries off, but I'm not there yet. And I can say, I don't know if I will ever be there. Realistically, when I am working through things and talking to my therapist, I don't know if I can ever get there because I still, even talking about it, get a heaviness in my chest. But I can say that I would love to because I look at how free he is and I'm like, I desire that freedom and that expansiveness so much that I will continue to do the work. And maybe one day I will get there. I hope I do arrive at that point.
Well, but I think you're being harder on yourself than, I mean, you, in the last 2 months, and it may just be me interpreting things incorrectly. I don't know, but it feels like there's been a big shift, and you have changed. Like you have, even when we were here for our event, you said, all right, this week I'm removing this limit from you. And I think that went well.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It didn't seem to hurt you, and it was nothing. It was, well, I'll say what it was. It was, you have the freedom to engage and kiss, stopping short of sex, with anybody you want, anytime. You don't have to ask for permission. And that's what I love doing, is that really getting to know people and
flirty, kissing,
just opening up to the natural expression of however you're feeling about the person in front of you.
And those really may not seem like big steps, but those are me intentionally saying to myself, I am not going to, I know this is, that jealousy and that pain or that heaviness comes from something that he didn't do to me. It's coming from trauma, and I'm going to choose to not sit in that trauma.
Well,
I'm going to allow myself to not be that hurt little girl. I'm going to take care of that hurt little girl and acknowledge her and love her and let her know that it's okay, that you're strong, that he's not going to hurt you. It's not going to be, it's a catastrophe. It's going to be okay. So,
well, that's part of what, if you start to embrace this idea, the ideas behind wild love theory, it does potentially give you an ethical motivation, not an ethical requirement, but the motivation to say, well, look, if I have these limits on my partner for my own safety and emotional security, but it's something that they wish they could do otherwise, then you're going to start to think about that as you limiting your person you trust and love the most. That may be okay. It's probably necessary. We kind of look at limits on your partner now as sort of relational training wheels that need to be there. You can't learn, most people need those training wheels to learn to ride a bike, but eventually you want to take those training wheels off so you can get the full experience of the bike ride, right? So it'll give you a reason to really start to dig in and work on yourself. And it's nothing to do with your partner in a sense. It's about, all right, I see what I need to work on for me. They have things they need to work on too, but that's up to them. And which was the whole, when I could not even talk to you about this until I had gotten to the point where I thought, I need nothing more from you than what I already have. But I feel like I can give you more than I'm giving. And here it is.
Well, and that's what it is. I feel like I can give you more than I'm giving is what really makes me want to, and it has made me want to heal those parts of me, because I can only give, I limit my giving when I'm not dealing with the trauma in that
Right, because it's
capacity
easier.
in a healthy way.
It's instead of working on yourself, I don't mean you, I mean in general, we all
Yeah.
do this. Instead of working on ourselves, it's much easier to just say, well, instead of working on myself to avoid this pain point, I will just make sure, I will tell you, you can't do that thing that causes this pain point.
Right.
That's a much easier thing to do, but it's also potentially problematic because now you've said, I love you, I trust you, you're awesome, you're my partner, but I don't trust you enough to not have these boundaries.
Well, and I don't
limits.
know if this is going to sound maybe controversial. It's not taking responsibility for your own pain. It's projecting it onto somebody else and blaming, making them the cause. Like, it's your fault that I'm feeling this way. Well, it's not your fault that I'm feeling this way, because you did nothing wrong. And when we talk about that misstep a couple of years ago, I told you then, I was like, this is not a you thing, this is a me thing. Like, yes, what you did hurt me, but why did that hurt me? And now looking back, I'm like, it hurt me because I had trauma that I hadn't dealt with. And it wasn't anything that you did, but it was limits I had put on you to keep me safe because I wasn't dealing with the shit that I needed to deal with. And once I dealt with that, I'm like, that you could do that today and I would not feel that again.
Well,
because
it's laughable to think that what happened that caused the only fight we've ever had.
Yeah.
Now, if it wouldn't even have been, I mean, we would have, it was nothing.
Right.
It was a nothing now. It was a big thing then. It should have been.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to excuse what happened, but
yeah.
But not only, you said that this, because I think it was a great point that you made, it almost puts the blame on your partner for stuff that's your own internal trauma. It also makes your partner, you're putting your partner in the position of also having to control or prevent that problem from coming up again. Because you're saying, not only is it your fault that I felt this way, but in order to make sure I don't feel this way anymore, you can't do that.
And you'd have to be a mind reader too, you know? So, and it is not easy. And we've talked to so many people in the lifestyle. There's so many women and men that have some type of physical, sexual, verbal, emotional trauma, or a combination of, I've had a combination of all of that in my childhood. And if you can't talk to your partner, you should be in therapy. You should. I am a huge advocate for therapy. Find a therapist that you can talk to, and work through it. And it's not easy. It's not fucking easy. I mean, there's things that I have remembered that I had buried that shock me, that I'm like, how did that little girl handle that and not just go off the rails and turn into a complete psychopath? And maybe that's still to come, but it is, there was just something in me as a child that was still, I craved love, and I love community, and I love deep friendships. And I'll say it again, my best friend, Gina, she was my beacon of what a friend should be and what love could be, because she loved me so completely and so no judgment. And that probably was my saving grace growing up, knowing that I had a friend like that, and my one brother who kind of was unstable in his own way, but stable for me until I could get out of the house. So, but go to therapy. Talk to your partner transparently. If you can't talk to your partner openly about that trauma yet, then you need to be in therapy.
Okay, so we earlier we said something like, if your relationship isn't really strong and stable, wild love theory is not something you should be looking at, and that just means that the fullest expression of, well, like taking all the limits off, you can't do that if you're on shaky ground already. But that doesn't mean you're not involved in the process of the kind of ideas that we're talking about here,
Yeah.
because it should start and just be a journey. Wild love theory is not a flip that you switch, it's a practice.
A switch that you flip.
What did I say?
A flip that you switch.
A flip that you, yeah, it's not a switch that you flip. It's an ongoing practice, and you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And, we had this really special moment with a couple last night who are very, very new, like less than a year into their lifestyle journey.
And they're very cautious, and they have beautiful communication with each other. Just absolutely beautiful.
And you can tell they're working on the same fears we all go through when we start. And I say they're on a wild love journey.
Yeah.
Because they're working together to overcome the in-baked emotions that we have from the way society thinks relationships ought to go. So for instance, and I found this girl exceptionally attractive, and I loved the way she talked. I loved the way her and her husband interacted.
Yeah.
And at some point, you and her had kissed.
Mm-hmm.
You and him had kissed.
Mm-hmm.
And me and him had kissed.
Yeah.
But she and I had not. And I was so attracted to her, and we had those moments where we're all just snuggled up. And finally, I asked, and I don't even remember how I asked it, but I said, I hope to get a kiss before you guys go. And she turned me down.
Yeah, she said, I just don't think I'm ready to kiss another man.
Yeah,
right
but it
now.
was so kind. She said, oh, thank you, Scott. That is so nice. I'm not sure I'm ready to kiss another man yet. I want to get there. But instead, do you mind if I sit in your lap and we
cheek to cheek,
and we just,
so I can feel your energy,
yeah,
she said.
But it was so kind. It was the kindest no you'll ever hear.
It was the most beautiful way she could honor herself. Yeah. And I was so filled, that made me so happy to see her just express I'm not ready for that. I'm going to honor myself, but here's what I am okay with.
Yeah.
And then later, her husband asked if he could kiss me, and I kissed him, and she started to feel something, and she immediately spoke up and was like, I'm just kind of feeling uncomfortable right now. From seeing that, and so.
But she didn't do it. It wasn't abrasive.
It wasn't abrasive.
It was like, whoa, this is bothering me. It was she let you guys finish.
Yeah, she was like, I'm feeling some feelings that don't feel comfortable right now, and I need. And so, she went and sat next to her husband, and he snuggled her up and made her safe. Yeah,
she kindly said, "Can I sit next?" I mean, because she and I were sort of hugged up, watching you guys kiss, probably 10 seconds or something like that. Yeah. And then she took some time, 30 seconds maybe, to kind of let that process for a second. And she goes, yeah, I'm struggling with that. I'm struggling watching that. And she just kind of crawled in his lap, and they hugged, and we hugged them and said, that is the most beautiful way of being.
Of honoring yourself and using your voice.
Transparent about the way you're feeling, because it's hard to say that. It's hard to let people know, oh, I don't, that's
well, and a lot of times what happens when a woman's uncomfortable and doesn't use her voice like that, I can sense it. At some point, I'll be able to pick up on something happen. I did say.
Biggest fear.
It is, because then I start going, I did something wrong. And then I'm bad. I did something wrong. I misstepped. I made her feel bad.
I hurt
her. And I start taking that in. And so that was such a wow, what a beautiful way to acknowledge your feelings, the uncomfortability, and express that to everyone in such a loving way that I didn't feel like I did something wrong. I felt like love on her. You need to go to your safe space and get that, go to your person. And I wanted to protect her. And yeah, it was really a beautiful thing. And like I said, that wasn't a very over sexualized experience we had last night. It was just a very beautiful energy exchange and conversations, and we're at Hedonism Resort. This doesn't have to be just a fuck fest. You can just meet people and have really great connections. And I have no doubt that we will continue a friendship with these people.
Well, yeah, and to make it even clearer, it's not like we have 3 or 4 more days with them and things may change.
They left today.
They had to leave today, and so it was a great moment. I've never. Here's the smart ass in me. It's the first time in 10 years. All right, look.
Are you gonna cry?
No, I'm not gonna cry. I just don't want people to hate me for what I'm about to say. It's the first time a woman's ever told me no, and I've never been more impressed with another person in the lifestyle. I don't think about anything I've ever seen. It was
so, ladies, if you want to impress him, just tell him no.
Oh, I can't say I've never been told no now.
Yeah. I will tell you, this is funny, this is unrelated, but one of my favorite lifestyle stories is the first year we did Be Better at Being Bad. And I won't use their names, but a couple walked into the lobby and we were checking people in. And you had been talking to the couple and they were getting ready to walk out. And I went up and I said, I want to meet you guys before you go check in. I'm April. And she told me her name. And he shook my hand and he just started walking away. And I said, hey, I didn't get your name. And he looked at me and he with this cute little sheepish grin, he goes, you don't get my name
yet.
Yeah, you don't get my name yet.
Yeah.
And then walked out. And I was like, that was a turn on. Like, just that's like so that.
Funny.
Like,
I would have thought that would have made you mad.
Like, he's like, I know who you are, but you don't get my name yet. And I was like, what? That, I will never forget that moment.
They're coming to our holidays.
Yeah, anyways. All right, guys. So if you have questions about wild love theory, reach out to us. If you have, you want to hop on a Zoom, we're happy to do that. There's a place on our website where you can schedule a Zoom with us. If you are dealing with trauma and you are not in therapy, I recommend Expansive Connection Coaching. They have therapists that can help you through that.
We'll put a link to them in our show notes.
And if you're not, you don't want to work with somebody, maybe you know them, you don't want to work with somebody you know, I've also used BetterHelp.com. That's who I've actually used for 3 years now. And you can choose a therapist that's sex positive and LGBTQ friendly and works with trauma or grief or whatever it is that you're working. Sometimes it takes a couple tries until you find a therapist that is a good fit for you. And that's okay. It's not a waste of time. It is an investment in yourself, in your relationship, and in your life. It's going to improve the quality of your life. So there's that. Anything else you want to add?
No, we've got, I don't know what now, 26 more days here at Hito. And we'll try and record a few more episodes. And we are going to try to interview some people when we hear interesting stories or things and just bring you little short snippets here in some of our episodes. But we'd love for you to come visit us while we're here if you get a chance and say hi and
go check out our retreats. And if there's a topic that you want us to cover or something that you want us to go into more depth about, shoot us an email at naughtygemonline@gmail.com. naughtygemonline@gmail.com. And remember to never stop playing.